Good night, good night, good night. Tell me if you can hear me well. This is Alternate Views. Kimar Stewart, your host this evening. We're testing the mic. One, two, three. Let me know if the mic is in sync with you. Let me know if the audio is clear. Let me know if the visual is clear as well. And let us get show on the road this evening. Yes. So let me just get this lighting properly. Yes. Uh yes. So good evening. My name is Kimar Short. I'll be your host this afternoon. Uh, Welcome to the program. As you know, uh, your loyal patron viewers, we want to welcome you all to the program this evening. As you can see, we made and are making some upgrades. So let me know what you think about it. We have our mic going, and we've upgraded our systems. And let me know. Let me know. Everybody's saying all good, all good, all good. So thank you guys very much for tuning in to Alternate Views this evening. Yet another Thursday. Today is the fourth day of July, which calls for a celebration in the United States for the 4th of July celebrations for those persons who may celebrate that. Um, There's the 4th of July. So let me say good evening to the early loyal patron supporters. We have Patrick Green. Good night to you, Patrick Green. Patrick is saying good night. Greetings, people. Welcome to Alternate Views, Patrick. We have Kel Biz, loyal patron supporter. Jefferson Sobers. Welcome to Alternate Views. Lemuel Toe, welcome, welcome. Robert Boyce, welcome. Uh, welcome. So let me firstly apologize for the late start this evening. We were starting out the technical aspects of the show behind the scenes, ensuring that we bring the best quality of programs to you. So, how are you doing this evening? How are you guys doing this evening? You know, how was your day? How was the hurricane? How was life during the winds, during the rain? Speak to me. Let me know how you guys are feeling. As you can see, we have some replica up in the background. Um, let me just highlight the replica to you. We have some replica going in the background. Um, so if we can just try to get that replica going. Uh, just give me 1 second. Uh, yeah. Yeah. So, let's get that replica going in the background. As you guys can see, what's going on in the back. Barbados, our favorite country in the world. It's our favorite country in the world, Barbados. So we have some replica in the background. We doing our thing here. Alternative views. So we want to welcome you all. More persons are calling away. You welcome the calls, you welcome the texts, you welcome everything. So Gabby was saying that the hurricane was kind of warm for her. Um, we're glad that you weren't impacted severely. Um, Everyone is saying lucky to be alive. There weren't any deaths in Barbados as far as I know. So that is uh, that's a good thing actually, because tonight that's what we're discussing: natural disasters and the impact that hurricanes and mudslides and landslides and tornadoes And as of late, what they're saying is pandemic, because pandemic has been added to what they call an emergency, and therefore the same conditions that exist for a hurricane exist for a pandemic as well. Uh, yeah. So don't forget to like and share the program. Don't forget to like and share alternate views. We're up at 50% so far. Um, we do way better than that. So let us get the program up and running, sharing it well, sharing it far away. Um, I am not able to share this evening, so I want you guys to share for me. Um, like I said, all of our devices are at work, and therefore you know, we want you to share for us. So let us share the program, share the program, share alternate views. Let us get this discussion going this evening. This discussion, as you know, will surround some more light. This evening we'll discuss natural disasters and the impact that natural disasters have. Yeah, natural disasters will have on a small island developing state like Barbados and Vincent Grenada. So that's what we're looking at tonight. So I want you guys to share alternate views. Don't forget to like as well. Share it all widely on WhatsApp. I'm trying to have access to my contact list, but that is proving difficult at this time. So I want you guys to share for me, share, and let persons know that we're on. We're going to kick off very soon. We're having a late start this evening, as we said earlier. So Gabby's is saying, took my contributions for the hurricane ravaged islands down today. So that's a good humanitarian gesture from Galvez. So Galvez, we want to sing praises for you for donating to those persons who are impacted by the hurricanes down the island. It shows the kindness of your heart and it speaks to the Barbadian spirit of kindness and giving to your fellow man and to helping those persons in need. So we want to say congratulations to Gail Biz for showing such a uh, humanitarian effort. So today, I'm sure you guys would have taken the press conference from the leader of opposition of Barbados, Mr. Ralph Tarn, which was held at the opposition's office today. He discussed extensively some issues surrounding the impacts of the hurricane and the fishing industry and how the fishing industry was impacted dearly by government policy and how indeed we're going to seek to compensate and to rebuild really and truly. Yes, and to rebuild really and truly a fishing industry in Barbados into something that could brag about. The fishing industry in Barbados, right, as you saw in those videos, and we're very sorry that we can't get those videos up for you to see. But what you can see in those videos is very heart wrenching, to say the least. Heart wrenching to say that you bought a boat and your boat is now destroyed. You are as a fisherman, not knowing how can you replace your boat, how can you feed your families, how can you supply those vendors who would normally buy from you fish, and these are very serious challenges plaguing the fishing industry right now. I'm sure the Minister of what is it, Environment, under which the fishing industries and fisheries division lay. The Minister of Environment has a whole set of work to do. Um, we had a Ministry of Blue Economy at one point. However, that ministry was discontinued after a short period. as an out and out ministry. So therefore, the Blue Economy Ministry, which had the responsibilities for all of the fishing aspects and the fisheries economy, the Blue Economy was shut down, and therefore the efforts were then transferred over to the Ministry of Environment. So the Minister of Environment in Barbados has a very huge role to play in rebuilding the Barbados fishing industry to a point that it is viable again, uh, to the point that it's a foreign exchange earner again, to the point that it creates livelihoods again, and to the point where it does not exclude working class fishermen who had boats to now create an environment where the rich and those who can afford boats can now get into the fishing industry and shut out those fishermen who built the fishing industry in Barbados to the point that it's at no. So we commend the efforts of the opposition leader of Barbados to help in conceptualizing a plan or putting forward the idea that there needs to be a plan to rebuild the fishing industry in Barbados, given the fact that all of or majority of the fishing boats who are housed in the Bridgetown complex fisheries division were destroyed so severely in that hurricane. And I am sure that uh, many of you saw the video. Now, we know how the technology goes with us, so we're going to try our best to get something up. However, we know it doesn't work out too well, so we're still going to try. But so far, we're building up nicely. We have around 68 persons. So, welcome you all to the show. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share um, alternate views. This evening, we are discussing natural disasters and the impact that natural disasters would have on the Barbados economy, the Vincentian economy, the Trinidadian economy, the St. Lucian economy, Caribbean economies at large, and how governments around the Caribbean have to put aside revenues, put aside funding to rebuild the country and to rebuild respective countries after the passage of a hurricane. We had Hurricane Beryl, and Hurricane Beryl hit or partially hit Barbados. Then Hurricane Beryl ravished Carriacou, which is part of Grenada. Then it ravished Jamaica. So therefore, my thought here is that majority of the Caribbean countries are prone to a natural disaster in that of a hurricane. We had a few hurricanes in our time. Um, I would not have been born yet, but we had Hurricane Janet, which severely destroyed Barbados. In more modern times, we had Hurricane Gilbert, I believe, and then in more modern times, we had Hurricane Ivan, we had Hurricane Thomas, we had uh, Hurricane Elsa, and we had some other hurricanes. So, my thing is not to call out all of the names of the hurricanes, but my thing here is to show you that hurricanes do indeed impact on Caribbean countries. It is a thing. It happens. We have a hurricane season that stretches from about June till November 30th, and that hurricane season we are sure to see bad weather. Even if it's not a hurricane, it is high waves, influx of seaweed. So we say that to say that some persons would call that climate change, or we're going through climate change, right? And in climate change, which is being pushed heavily, and which has been pushed since the times of former Prime Minister of Barbados, Lord Erskine Sandiford, as part of his IMF program, included a component on climate change. So since the 1990s and early 80s, Barbados was focused on climate change, and we didn't hear much about it during the 1994 to 2008 period under former Prime Minister Onaf of Barbados. We didn't hear much then about, we heard about global warming and that we should brace for the melting of the ice caps and global warming. That was a thing during that period. The former Prime Minister of Barbados, Friend Stewart, often spoke about climate change as well. Dr. Dennis Law, who was Minister of Environment in Barbados, he addressed the United Nations. Uh, he addressed the United Nations on climate change. The same United Nations that the current Prime Minister of Barbados addresses. Dr. Dennis Law, as Minister of Environment of Barbados, addressed the United Nations Secretariat as well, the same area which the current Prime Minister is in. So we've had persons previously as climate leaders and pushing the idea of climate change, but now that has been uh, taken to new heights under this uh, administration, and so far we have included in that climate push an IMF program, and so far we have included the United Nations, not the United, the IMF, sorry, Resilience and Sustainability Trust, the IMF RST. Remember, I spoke to you guys extensively about the RST and the bid for climate change, eh, and the bid for climate change. I spoke to you extensively about that and how Barbados had a specific. Yeah, well, we're getting some good progress. Oh shoot, we're getting some good progress here on the video. Let us hope that it goes well. I can show you Dr. Dennis Law, former Minister of Environment, speaking at COP, or what you call the Climate Conference of Barbados, and to show you that we have had these discussions ongoing for quite some years. The discussion on climate change is not a new one, and but it's an ever-present one, given the fact that we have had the impact of this hurricane. Right? So let me get this thing up. Ah,
Temperature rise, sea temperature, sea level rise, and we had some interesting meetings yesterday. Of course, anchored by the CARICOM Secretariat, and we were able to convene a meeting in the late hours of the evening yesterday, looking at that matter. Um, is understanding the urgency of the CARICOM concern. We noticed, of course, that has now reached a stage where world other world leaders, ministers, and um, are close to um, there were suggestions that subsume the 1.5 conversation, but we've insisted that 1.5 is the threshold at which we feel very comfortable at operating, with a progressive lowering as we go forward. We are not at all convinced that 2 degrees will be suitable for our survival, and therefore we've continued to push our theme, and this is a theme that we've been pushing for many years now, and I, for the first time, I feel that we're closer at getting other countries to understand our concern and to accept that it is legitimate, it is based in the science, and of course it captures the imaginations and ambitions of all CARICOM people.
Yes, viewers. So I tried to get a clip in there with Dr. Dennis Law addressing you on the issue of climate change and sea level rise. And we saw from the videos, since we're getting some good cooperation this evening, we're going to try to get those videos of Hurricane Beryl in Barbados and see what it caused for us to show you that what Dr. Dennis Law spoke about in terms of sea level rise and the change of right. So we're going to play a clip from a news station, and this clip is it's very short actually. Um, so we're going to play this clip from CBS, which shows the impacts of Hurricane Beryl and show you, yes, Patrick, climate change is indeed, we have those discussions really and truly about if it's a hoax, if it's not a hoax, but look at the fact that we have severe damage. Look at the fact that rooftops could have been blown off. Look at the fact that hotels flooded. Look at the fact that the fishermen lost boats. So although the climate change narrative may be questionable, what do we call right now, or what do we call it, where the seas of our base are perpetrating these constructs that we have walls and arches and mangroves are coming into the road and destroying hotels and destroying vehicles and destroying businesses. What do we call that then, Patrick? Right. So it doesn't have to have a name for me, but the fact that we in the Caribbean are impacted by heavy rains, we're impacted by rain, we're impacted by flooding. There needs to be a contingency plan for us. Right? Because the situation will arise when most of us will be seeking government assistance to get back on our feet. Right. So what then do we do? Right. What then do we do? So I want to play some footage for you, trying to get it loading, so you can see where we're going with the narrative of conversation this evening, and to show you that this discussion of natural disasters in the Caribbean is one that is merited. Did you know? Did you know that Barbados is the second country after Grenada to have natural disaster clauses in its debt? So, as part of Barbados's debt restructuring, the government put oh, shoot, the government put in its debt instruments that they could suspend debt payments for 2 years. So, for example, if they owe the IMF, they could not pay the IMF for 2 years. Right? No, it's a debt suspension, but it does not come free. The money will be later added on in interest or added on to the principal payment. So therefore, you will have to pay for the leverage. Right? You will have to pay for the leverage. Right? It will not come free. But Barbados is one of the leading countries in the world to have debt payment suspended on the impact of a hurricane, similar to no. So I am putting this on the floor. Any one of my viewers can put the question to any one of the government ministers. They could put the question to any official. They could put the question to anybody that right now, if right, the question needs to be asked if Barbados is going to be opting to suspend its debt payments for the next 2 years under the Caribbean Risk Facility Insurance. The Caribbean Facility for Risk Insurance. If Barbados is going to be suspending its debt payments for the next 2 years. So I put the question to the Prime Minister of Barbados. I put the question also to the Ministry of Finance of Barbados to answer this question. Are you going to suspend Barbados's debt payments for the next 2 years? And I saw an article in the newspapers from an economist at the central bank, and that economist, his name is Christopher Kinch, and Mr. Kinch is arguing that the government has a $600 million natural disaster bill, right? So I would love to have Mr. Kinch on at some point in time to explain to us his findings in terms of a $600 million bill, because that's a very interesting find. So I would have said in other forums that if the government can justify that they have damage over 7.5 million US dollars, that they can opt to cash in on the option of deferring the payments to creditors for 2 years. And based off Kinch's estimate, economist Kinch's estimation, now I did not see, if I'm being fair, I did not see the figure that he quoted for specifically barrel, but he says $600 million over a period. Over a period. So if that is the case, I suppose that the government has thought, oh, give me a second. Right, I suppose that the government has surpassed the threshold of that 7.5 million US. I suppose they have passed that threshold. Like, just give me 1 second. Let me turn on my Yes, sorry about that temporary break. We were just trying to get the lighting fixed. We're still getting it worked on. Um, yes, so yeah, I'm basically saying that I'm not understanding a $600 million bill. Is it that the government owes that amount to the central bank? Explain, need clarity. Well, Gabby's my understanding of a $600 million bill is that the government has to pay out $600 million in damages. So that could include repair of roads, that could include repair of houses, that could include repair of critical infrastructure on the island, uh, that could include insurance payouts, that could include um, death payouts, that could include welfare payments, and that could include quite a few other things, Gabbies. So it just simply means what government is paying out, right? What they're paying out. So we are getting our lighting up. Just let me know everything should be. Yes, you're back in power, light and power. Yeah. So as I was saying earlier, um, yeah, that is money the government pays out. So it's $600 million less that the government has to spend on health, $600 million less that they have to spend on schools, $600 million less that they have to spend on quite a few things. So that is what he meant, I suppose, about a $600 million bill. I'd like to get Economist King on the program at some point in time to have a discussion with him. Um, but until then, we will keep logging. But at this point, the government needs to hold a press conference and tell Barbadians if they are going to, if they are going to default on our debt payments for the next 2 years because of the damage of Hurricane Beryl. That question needs to be answered upfront. Right? The government of Barbados, and I am tasking all of you viewers, all of you alternate viewers, to write in the media, to ask questions, call in on Brass Stacks, speak on it on the Marcel Show. Ask the government of Barbados if they intend to default on the debt of Barbados for the next 2 years, given the impacts of Hurricane Beryl? Right? If they can't answer that, then the answer is yes. And then the government will more than likely seek to abuse that fiscal space and go on a well-spending partisan spree with the fiscal space that they will save in terms of the fact that they don't have to pay outward X amount of interest payments that were due. So if you've been following alternative views, you would know that the government has an interest bill over $1 billion in interest that is due to pay out. Right? So the government is paying out $1 billion. Last year they paid out $1 billion. This year they paid out another $1 billion in interest payments. So therefore the government will be saving on some of that if they choose to default on the interest payments because of Hurricane Beryl. So I am tasking all of you to ask those questions to the government, to the Minister of Finance, to the Prime Minister, if they're going to default on our debts. And you default on the debts based off the natural disaster clause. And the natural disaster clause, is if you are hit by a hurricane, if you're hit by a flood, if you're hit by a tornado, if you're hit by anything that is God made. And it could be in some instances man-made too. Man-made natural disaster, but a God-made disaster. The natural disaster clause, which is in Barbados' debt, inclusive when you restructure the debt, says that if a hurricane or a natural disaster or a climate, Barbados has a climate issue, then Barbados can opt to default on its debt for the next 2 years. It is not free. You will have to pay. Right? It is not free. You will have to pay, and it will come in the form of a higher interest rate, or it will come in the form of a higher principal payment. So, tell me, alternate viewers, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think that Barbados needs to opt for a default on debt, or do you think that we can go ahead and pay down our debts and still rebuild resilience after the hurricane has passed without defaulting on the debts? So tell me what you think. In your estimation, viewers, do you think that enough damage was done to the country from Hurricane Beryl to merit Barbados opting to default on the debt for the next 2 years to save fiscal space, to reinvest in building climate resilience, to reinvest in building climate infrastructure, and start paying the debts in 2 years, or can Barbados continue to pay out $1 billion in interest payments without hassle? Based off the state of the Barbados economy, viewers, in your estimation, can we afford? Is it plausible? Is it practical? What do you think? Should we pay now? Should we opt to hold on to the money, save ourselves some time? What do you think? No. What you can see here on the screen, alternative viewers, is Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Amor Motley. What you can see on the right is IMF Director Kristalina Georgieva. What you can see on the top right is the Minister of Finance of Madagascar, and you can see a host from the IMF, but it seems to be Bloomberg, I believe, and they are hosting a panel discussion between these lot here, and the title of this panel discussion is Natural Disasters and Climate Change. Natural disasters and climate change. So I want you to listen to a bit to what our Prime Minister has to say And I wanted to listen to what the IMF director has to say as well. And then we will determine if the leadership of Barbados, we have some discussions surrounding what the leadership of Barbados had to say about natural disasters and climate change for Caribbean countries.
Prime Minister of Barbados, and of course, Economy and Finance Minister of Madagascar, Richard Madrato. Thank you so much for your time today. Prime Minister Motley, let's start with you. For small states like Barbados, it is 1.5 to stay alive. Global warming needs to be contained to 1.5 degrees Celsius, or it could be catastrophic. Give us a sense of the magnitude of climate change that you're having to deal with.
First of all, let me thank you, moderator, for having me here, and let me say welcome, or hello rather, to Managing Director, as well to be a champion at this stage. And the 5 is not a noble goal. But it's our reality to be able to succeed. And we have, over the course of the last, I would say, 2 decades, seen increasing.
Yeah, we're getting some trouble here with the video sticking. You know how it goes with the technology, but we're trying our best to hear what you have to say. But basically, what was being said is that we have 1.5 to stay alive. And that was the same exact slogan that Dr. Dennis Lowe had when he was Minister of Environment, when he spoke at COP21. So, the same climate agenda that Dr. Dennis Lowe focused on when he was Minister of Environment spoke to the changes in atmospheric temperatures and how we be impacted as a region. I tried my best to get the video that you can hear the Prime Minister of Barbados speaking directly to his climate agenda, the climate narrative, and exactly what uh, the leadership of Barbados is expecting to get out of focusing on the climate agenda. So the argument is that Barbados,
we learned as kids to stand by from June to end of October, and we now have 2 extra months every year, so that for most of our small island developing states, we're facing the spectacle of floods or hurricanes or high winds half the year. Now that doesn't allow us to plan, and as a result, there's always a contingency that's required. Eruption is the Grenadine.
yeah, we're trying to get this off the screen now. This is not serving us too well. But what was basically being said is that Barbados does not contribute to the carbon, basically to the carbon footprint of the world. And therefore, a country like Barbados, who's not causing the climate crisis, should not be made to pay should not be made to pay by having to rebuild their country after a hurricane has ravished it, because basically we are not the ones causing this quote unquote climate change. So the bigger countries that have uh, access to foreign reserves are what the IMF would call special drawing rights. The director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, is saying that those countries who have large foreign exchange reserves could direct those foreign exchange reserves to lend to smaller countries like Barbados at cheap and concessional rates. So France, probably a country that has a lot of foreign reserves, England, China, Japan, the States, the entire G7. Right? So the G7 having large foreign reserves in their countries. The head of the IMF is arguing, along with the Prime Minister of Barbados, arguing to the international world that they could redirect those large foreign exchange reserves that are sitting there doing nothing onto the smaller developing states like Barbados at a concessional and cheap rate based off the climate narrative. So you lend them based off the fact that they need to do disaster preparedness, they need to do disaster management, they need to build climate infrastructure, they need to build climate related houses, they need to drive electric vehicles. So this climate related activity, and according to the IMF director, they want the larger countries in the world and the Prime Minister of Barbados to dig in deep. But persons came up with the argument that, this is risky, this is these countries don't even have good credit ratings. Look at Barbados's credit rating is junk. How do you expect me to just take up $1 billion and give to Barbados when Barbados is constantly mismanaging its economy? And the Barbadian politicians have constantly mismanaged the Barbados economy, that I would not lend Barbados my money through a private bank like JP Morgan Chase or Citibank, but you're forcing me, or not forced, but you're corralling me as a large country just because they have massive foreign reserves to lend to a country like Barbados that is corrupt and defaults on debt to lend that country my money at concessional rates. So you see the challenge. Like, no, the ironic thing is that Barbados, based off the recent history of Barbados, I'm not talking about before, I'm talking about 2018. And this is where I can go to alternate views. This is 2018. This is where I can quote from Alternate Views, the book. Right? In 2018, Barbados recorded its worst year of economic history ever in this country. It's worst year. And I dare any economist to test that statement. Barbados recorded its worst year of economic history. And I can list a few of the things of why I say that, to substantiate the point of why I say that, right? Because I like to quote my facts, and I'm going to quote directly from Alternate Views to show that I wrote it in book format. Barbados had its worst year of economic history in 2018. Right? So, Barbados in 2018, you had a trade union protesting for a 23% raise for the workers. When the government changed, the trade unions then accepted 4%. When the government changed, they said they were going to remove NSRL and prices in the supermarket would come down. NSRL was removed. However, the prices in the supermarket doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and more. All right, that's not all. The municipal solid waste tax that was charged on those persons who dump solid waste and were charged on the persons whose the value of your house had to be over $300,000. They replaced that with a sewage tax on every Barbadian's water bill. That even if you just have a pipe connection, you still have to pay a garbage and sewage tax. So 5% of the population is connected to a sewage system in Barbados, but 95% of people are paying a sewage tax. They were told that the sewage tax should be 18 months, temporary. This is now more than 5, 6 years, sewage tax still hasn't come off. We were also told that VAT would come back on the 15%. That did not happen. Right? We were told that something would be done to bring back Canadian businesses in Barbados after the Canadian Parliament had a field day on Barbados, and the Finance Minister of Canada, Bill Marno, was ridiculed in Canadian Parliament. How many of you know that the former Canadian Minister of Finance, Bill Marno, had association with a company called Marno Chappelle, and that Marno Chappelle had interest in Barbados? And the former Canadian Finance Minister, Bill Marno Chappelle was one of the companies hired by the National Insurance Scheme. So the Canadian Finance Minister had interest in Barbados, and he was ridiculed in Parliament. He then later had to step down and resign as Finance Minister. And that is how now Deputy Prime Minister Krista Freeland, she got appointed to the Ministry of Finance as Minister of Finance. But the former Minister of Finance of Canada, Bill Marno, had deep financial interest in Barbados, and the Canadians were attacking him based off the fact that Barbados was considered to be a tax haven, and he was doing nothing about it because he himself had interest in Barbados. And when you read the list of consultants for the National Insurance Scheme of Barbados, Marno Chappelle of Canada was big on the list for consultancies and work done for the National Insurance Scheme of Barbados. Right? So, nothing was done to bring back Canadian business. Right? We entered into an IMF program. We paid White Oaks excessive amounts of money. Right? We paid White Oaks $54 million for that restructuring. Right? And the deal with White Oaks was signed 5 days after the election victory in 2018. And that deal was signed 2 days before the Barbadian government announced that they were defaulting on their debts. Right? So, should I keep going? Right? The amount of atrocities occurring in 2018. Right? Barbados became the third country in the world to restructure its treasury bills, ahead of Uruguay and Russia. Right? Uruguay and Russia. Nowhere in the world does the government rob its citizens and restructure their treasury bills, but it happened in Barbados. Right? The banks hit debt restructuring, the credit unions hit debt restructuring, insurance hit debt restructuring. Right? And this was a forceful debt restructuring, by the way. This was not a mutually agreed debt restructuring with the banks, the insurance, the credit unions, the individual investors. They passed the debt restructuring with something called a collective action clause, which allows them to enact another debt restructuring with only 75% of the creditors. I should also let you know that 4 government institutions can own 75% of the debt. So a government just needs to consult itself again before it decides to restructure the debt. So the international financial markets, the large countries that both the IMF and the Prime Minister of Barbados are begging cap in hand to lend them money to build this climate infrastructure under the Bridgestone Initiative. They are not going to lend Barbados because Barbados's credit rating is at extreme junk. And the ability of Barbados to repay these countries in full and on time is extremely risky. And under normal conditions of the private investment market, Barbados does not qualify for lending. The only institutions in the world that are lending Barbados money right now are the IMF, the IADB, the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, and the multilateral development banking system, which does policy lending, not investment lending. Policy lending, which means that it comes with conditions. Outside of those persons, the Chinese government is lending Barbados money. The Canadian government was lending Barbados money. I'm not sure if they're still lending us it. No. But those are the sources that Barbados is borrowing from. We can't print money because the government in 2018 passed a law at the central bank which says that the government can only print XYZ amount of GDP per year. And if they want to print in excess of that, they have to go back to Parliament. And this was a move to cap the excessive printing of money which was occurring under the last Minister of Finance, who was printing money at that time. So the government passed the bill to restrict the excessive printing of money. So they don't have that lever to pull. So they can't, and they can also can't borrow from the national insurance. Right. So the government's access to funding and access to financing is so tight that the government is seeking to aim or use the opportunity of climate change and this whole climate schematic and this Bridgestone initiative to have access to debt and have access to capital to invest in climate change and climate resilience under what they call the Bridgestone initiative. And this idea is heavily supported by the IMF. Right? I'm so sorry that I can't get the video up. I am totally sorry I can't get the video up. So that you could hear for yourselves, as I say from the horse's mouth, exactly what is going on. So, I think I have to go back through it again. IMF Resilience and Sustainability Trust. This hurricane barrel falls right up the alley of the IMF program. Right? It falls right up the alley of the IMF program because we were borrowing on the under the IMF program under the condition of climate change. So conspiracy theorists will say that they at least knew that these hurricanes were coming, that they planned them, that they geoengineered them, that they brought out the heart gun and conspiracy theory. But then on the other hand, some persons will argue that, well, we get hit with hurricanes on a regular. We get hit with flooding on a regular. Hey. So at the end of the day though, we all need to be prepared for when these disasters hit. Right. But what we also need to do is to tell the government to be responsible and to not use the situation as an opportunity to take on excessive debt. Right. So if we put forward the logic of not having excessive debt to rebuild, then the government will come with the logic that, well, let us suspend debt payments. So suspending debt payments now will come at an increased cost later. So what options do you want? What, as a leader, can you do to have a scenario where both the people benefit and the government still keeps its fiscal metrics intact, where the government doesn't have to overspend to rebuild the country, or the government doesn't have to overborrow to rebuild the country? How do you strike a financial balance between having a high debt level like what we have right now, having limited fiscal space? How then do we find the resources to rebuild the country? How do we find the resources to give the fishermen to get back boats? How then do we build infrastructure along the coastlines of Barbados and the coastal environs to ensure that the sea does not burst and penetrate to come inland again? Do we have the money available on government books that we can just go in the treasury right now and take up $500 million and do an entire coastal program from St. Lucie straight up to north to the lighthouse in St. Philip, from lighthouse in St. Philip, Consett in St. John, Bathsheba in St. Joseph, Long Pond in St. Andrew, River Bay in St. Lucie? Do we have the resources to complete an entire coastal improvement of Barbados, where we build wider mangroves, where we build higher walls, where we build some infrastructure to protect us and protect our economies from the passage of hurricanes and other natural disasters? Right. So the issue with the fishermen, right? We had the opposition leader of Barbados arguing of compensation for the fishermen. And I agree. Fishermen need to be compensated. The question, however, goes, where do we get the resources? Do we borrow funding from the IMF, and do we borrow under the Resilience and Sustainability Trust? Because the Resilience and Sustainability Trust, which is under the IMF program, with Barbados being the first country in the world to benefit from this program, do we go back to the IMF and say that we want additional resources because we've now been hit by hurricane? And the rationale for this program is indeed hurricanes and natural disasters. So what do we do as a country? What will be our choice? Do we tough it out and use the money from our tax dollars, or do we also tough it out and decide that we're going to borrow additional debt under the IMF program to rebuild the fishing industry and to build other infrastructure? No, this is my thing. No, I think that the fishing industry needs to be back up and running, because I don't think we need a frozen fish economy. I don't think we need to be importing frozen fish from all across Europe and China and what. No, we don't need that. We don't need that. We just need the infrastructure where the fishermen can have the boats repaired. And this is my suggestion. So this is my suggestion. My suggestion to help the fishermen get back on their feet. Right? This was if I was in the government shoes right now. No, people say you often criticize, but if it were you, I would say that the government should borrow or get money, whatever you want to use, from the same blue-green bank that they set up in Barbados, and offer the fishermen access to a fund or facility where the government can provide the materials and the labor. The government can provide the materials and subsidize the labor, working in tandem with the blue-green bank to help those fishermen get back on their feet, interest-free, without interest. Without interest. So let me just read one or two of my comments here. So good evening to all of you again. Marilyn Braffett, Rachel Thornhill, Annika Hope, Mr. Angel, Mervyn Marius, ADG, right, Marilyn is saying they're going to default and going to try to borrow more money. That's also an option. That option is on the table as well. Lemilta is asking what will happen when the next hurricane hits, given that we have another 5 months to go in the hurricane season. Well, if another hurricane hits, the options are you have to have an increase in debt to finance the repair of the country, or you have to increase taxes to have excess revenues if you don't want to borrow. Two options. Or divert money from a ministry or two to help. But the options are very few right now. Hey, we know that the Japanese are big on fishing, the Chinese are into fishing industries. So I would definitely not be surprised to see the Japanese, who has been investing heavily in disaster management equipment for Barbados, and also the Chinese, who have been investing heavily in the Scotland district, that they will not be eager to step forward and help Barbados replenish their fishing industry. These things are very highly possible under a republic. So there are plenty options out there for Barbados. Well, not plenty, there are a few options out there for Barbados. You just have to choose which road to walk. But it comes down to your choices as a government or a future government. What do you want to do for the people? given that every year for 6 months that there will be hurricanes coming to impact on the country? Do you have the money? Do you have the reserves? Do you have the revenues to put aside, knowing that every year you have to pay out $600 million to rebuild the country? Right. So these are just some options on the table. So Marvin Mars is saying we are in a debt trap, which is very true, we are. But we were in a debt trap before the hurricane hit. Remember that. Pedro Gemma is saying the case for suspended debt payments had been discussed by RPM multiple. Yeah, and this was discussed on the COVID, right? This was discussed under COVID-19, and then we had Hurricane Elsa, and then we had the Ash program. But Hurricane Elsa did not do well. Let me backtrack. I can't quantify what did more damage to the naked eye. It looks like Beryl did more damage to the country than Elsa, but it was different types of damage because Elsa had roofs blown off, and something, and Beryl had more flooding, more high rains, not a lot of water. So there were two different systems, but we had that at the time, Elsa, and there was a case for debt suspension. So how about now where the complete fishing industry is dilapidated and destroyed? How about now that the coastlines were breached? How about now that many trees are down? How about now that the water of Barbados went off for extended periods of time for no good reason? Right? So remember that the Prime Minister of Barbados, who's now the Minister of Water Resources and Water Works, who has lined up with the IMF to borrow $600 million to invest in a water reclaim and reuse project. A water reuse and reclaim project because they ascertain that Barbados is under a drought, and therefore we have to reuse and recycle as much water as possible. And they will be borrowing $600 million from the IMF under the Resilience and Sustainability Trust, along with the Green Climate Fund and the Blue Green Bank, to provide loans to the private sector to upgrade the sewage plants in Barbados from primary sewage plants to tertiary level sewage plants. And that basically means that they want to recycle all of that sewage water, the toilet water, reuse the toilet water, reuse that sewage water, and to put it back into the drinking water aquifers that Barbadians can then reuse it through their pipes. And they will be doing that at the South Coast sewage plant, and they will be doing that at the Bormiston plant in St. John, and they'll be doing that across all the other pumping stations across Barbados, the other plants, where they change out and allow for the upgrade, right, of this water reuse and reclaim project. So how do you feel about using recycled reused water through your pipes? Right? So these are changing times. These are changing times. And a hurricane can expose so much. Right? A hurricane can expose so much. So a hurricane exposed to Barbados, that a hurricane with very minimal water impact inland can cause the water network of Barbados to be turned off for an extended period of time, right? So we like to speak about green economy. We like to speak about solar power. So let me ask you, alternate viewers, in the midst of Hurricane Beryl, how much sunlight did you see? How much sunlight did you receive? How much sunlight did you receive? So in the midst of a hurricane, let's say for example the entire country goes green and we decide to use solar panels. During the hurricane, then everybody's electricity will be off if we depending on sunlight, because you have rain, you have clouds, you have rain, you don't have sunlight. So that means that everybody electricity would remain off if we decided to go green and move ourselves off the electric grid completely. If we were to just go fully solar powered. So you see there's some downsides to the green economy. Um, there's some downsides to this renewable energy economy, and hardly anybody spoke to the impact that natural disasters will have on Barbados' transition into a fully renewable energy economy by 2030. Nobody, nobody spoke about the impact of hurricanes, flooding, and other natural disasters, and how it impacts Barbados' bid to go fully renewable energy by 2030. I just gave you the prime example. During a hurricane, when there is no sun, how would the country be powered? Still have to rely back on the electricity grid. A backup battery, which is an expense. Right, which is an expense. We had Dr. Justin Robinson who came on the program and said that renewable energy infrastructure is not cheap. Right. So a backup battery, Robert Boyce, would be considered a luxury. Just like how many Barbadians will not have a backup generator, or many Barbadians will not even have a generator in the first place. Furthermore, a backup generator. So you're dealing with people who are financially constrained, people living on a financial constraint. You're asking them to go green and go renewable energy. However, when a natural disaster hits, so there's a huge need here. There's a huge need for conversation. There's a huge need for conversation. Yeah. Okay. Well, Patrick is saying, depending on how many backup batteries you have, you gotta have electricity to last at least 4 days. You can also use truck batteries or car batteries. Well, hmm, these are options. These are options. However, you keep putting forth options that are costly. Right? Many Barbadians are living on the bare minimum. So to take on extra costs, right? To take on extra costs, it will become problematic. I hope you're saying what I'm saying, but you are correct. Those persons who have the excess resources can do things like that. So even in the transition to renewable energy, those persons with the resources to afford it, they will be still better off. Right? They will still be better off because they have the financial resources to be able to afford and maintain the transition over to solar powered equipment. To me, we could have a mixture, hybrid. We can have both oil economy and we can have a renewable energy economy. We can have both. So let's look at some countries across the Caribbean. Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Jamaica, all impacted by Hurricane Beryl. And naturally, countries do send aid. You get donations of food stuff, clothing, you might get some lumber, and you might get uh, army personnel coming on the ground to help rebuild and to get countries back up and running. But what is the regional response to natural disasters? What is the regional response to natural disasters? Right? It can't just be sending aid. It can't just be sending cases of sardines and tuna and other food stuff across the sea. What is the response? The regional the level of CARICOM. We have Caribbean leaders. We have CARICOM heads of government meetings. So at those CARICOM heads of government meetings, what is the national or the regional, disaster management response to these hurricanes, to these floods? Right? What is it? So we have a regional response to crime. We often see the drug plane flying over Barbados. Well, we don't have we didn't have a ship raiders, but I think we have a ship raiders now. You see foreign coast guards on the seas because they claim that they're hunting narcotics and drug traffickers. But we don't only want assistance in tackling narcotics and drug traffickers. Eh, If I'm being fair, I do see uh, foreign ships come down to the Caribbean and help when some of the soldiers are on foreign missions. They help to rebuild one or two countries or so, but that is not adequate for me. What is the collective response from Caribbean leaders to hurricanes? What is the Prime Minister of Barbados saying to the Prime Minister of Jamaica that we all can't hear? What is the Prime Minister of St. Vincent saying to the Prime Minister of Dominica? What are the other Prime Ministers around the Caribbean saying to the Prime Minister of Grenada? What is Dick Mitchell saying to Mayor Motley that we all can't hear at a CARICOM has a government meeting, speaking specifically to if we are impacted at the level of CARICOM on a natural disaster? Say, for example, a tsunami is coming to the Caribbean and all of these countries have to evacuate. What is the plan to get all of us out of the Caribbean? I once attended a session at Eureka Hill, and this session had some tourism ministers from around the Caribbean. We had the tourism minister, Carrie Simmons from Barbados. We had Lindsey Grant, who was the tourism minister from St. Kitts. Then we had a Caucasian gentleman who was the minister from Antigua. And then I think we had, I can't remember the other person, but I asked the question at large, if anything had to happen to Barbados, do we have arrangements with other Caribbean countries to hold some of us temporarily? The answer was basically, man, if it had to happen, then we will work out something. Dang. Hey, if this country had to had a serious emergency that we had to evacuate this country, how does a country with one airport, if Beryl, the hurricane, had to destroy the Grantliados International Airport, that the airport was impossible for a month, tourism and Barbados would be on a very slow and painful death. We saw it during COVID when the planes couldn't come. Majority of the tourists that come to Barbados come by air. A lot of tourists come here by sea too, but not that many. They just come here temporarily, lay over, a little something, something, and gone. But majority of our long stay tourists come by air. And we have one airport in Barbados. And if that airport is not functionable, what do we do? Hey, so we have our SS regional security planes, all the thing. If the Grand Leaders International Airport is destroyed, where's the same RSS plane going to land? Is there any emergency landing strips in Barbados? Are there any emergency boating facilities that, for example, if the Bridgetown port it can't dock in there, where can you go around Barbados that a ship can dock to evacuate people off this island if we had to have a tsunami? So, is it time to take the former so is it time to take the former representative for St. Lucie, Dennis Kelman? Is it time to take Dennis Kelman's consideration and to put another airport in St. Lucie, another airport for Barbados in St. Lucie? Because Beryl showed us, Beryl showed us that if anything happens to the ground, and COVID showed us, if you can't get in and out the air in Barbados, things are on its way to death. So, for example, if the Grand Adams Airport is out of commission, what do we do? Right? All of this is part of the climate planning, the climate resilience, right? So, you're having climate, well, quote unquote, climate change. You're having all of these issues going on. Contingency planning. Pedro is saying that the plane will land in St. John. There's no long stretch of road long enough for a plane to land in St. John. So I am asking you people, if Barbados had a serious emergency Rich Caribbean country would take Barbadians in to host Barbadians. If Barbados had to be rendered inhabitable because of a tsunami or a flood or even a nuclear disaster, but is there any country in the world nearby in the Caribbean that would take us? Guyana certainly has the landmass to absorb us, but will they take us? Will Trinidad take us? Jamaica take us? Right. So I say that to say, based off the frequency of natural disasters and based off the ever-present nature of Kikam Jenny and other type of volcanic, volcanic existences around the Caribbean, at any time, anything can happen to disrupt the natural way of life in Barbados. What is the emergency plan to save the lives of Barbadians? We don't even have a contingency plan to save boats. We had the parish of St. John having one hurricane shelter, which was the large school. One hurricane shelter for a big parish like St. John? That does not sound very disaster prepared to me. So if I live in Cherry Grove in St. John, if I live in Venture in St. John, if I live in Martins Bay in St. John, if I live Concept Bay in St. John, call it Savannah, Lemon Arbor, I have to leave, I have to leave all there to travel miles to get to one hurricane shelter? And we call Barbados disaster prepared? So we need to invest some monies. We need to invest some monies in infrastructure. I ain't just talking about building a hurricane shelter just for building a hurricane shelter. See, hurricane season is 6 months of the year. So I'm speaking about building community infrastructure, community centers that could be constructed into hurricane shelters, all in one building. All schools in Barbados, primary schools, secondary, all of them should be hurricane shelters. You have Mount Tabor School, can be a hurricane shelter. You got Mount Tabor Church, no hurricane shelter. You have a community and welfare office in Gaw Hill, St. John that could simply be repaired, no hurricane shelter. But one hurricane shelter for a big parish, all up at Law School, close to Marcel Street, Society. That is not logical. Lives could be lost. The road could be blocked. You are encouraging people to get in a car and drive on the road all to that hurricane shelter. Electrical poles could be down. Flooding could be going around. And you're putting people's lives at harm because the government fails to maintain the infrastructure of the country. Right. St. Margaret's School, St. Mark's School, St. Mark's Church. Well, I know where they won't put St. John Parish Church because St. John Parish Church has so many cracks in it. We don't know how many more years St. John Parish Church has to go. So St. John Parish Church is indeed in need of upgrades. St. John Parish Church is cracked in so many places. So even to preserve the history of the country, meaning building these hurricane resilient and fireproof type of infrastructure and buildings to help preserve the history. So institutions like the church, the archives, and those places that have historical value, those should be built specifically with the notion that hurricanes do come, but these buildings have to outlast life because they're historical buildings and they mean something to society. And Marietta Ford is saying St. Joseph has one hurricane shelter, also the Hurricane Center. That's crazy. St. Joseph, St. John, and St. Andrew are three parishes that are prone to extremely violent hurricane activity. So not only is the seas rough and dangerous, the winds also on that side of the world are very high. Right? You have the coastal erosion going on, soil erosion going on, a dilapidation and a lack of maintenance for those parishes. Right? You have sea sprays going on, destroying buildings. Right? And the only set of people in the world worthy to invest in the Scotland district are the Chinese. The Chinese are investing in the Scotland district from St. Lucie through to Long Pond and St. Andrew, through to Chimborazo and St. Joseph, Pothouse and St. John, coming all up to St. Philip. The Chinese are heavily investing in infrastructure on the east side of Barbados, with the full knowledge that that side of the world is extremely prone to land slippage, soil erosion, and deeper infrastructural issues. So, are the Chinese building hurricane resilient infrastructure? Are we going to learn a thing or two from the Chinese in terms of rebuilding the infrastructure for the South Coast? Or are we going to build back substandard work that's just going to be destroyed in the next couple of months because we want to keep borrowing loans to have money to spend? Or is that the culture? Right. So I hope you're saying what I'm saying. So RST. But before we get into that, we're up at 191 persons. So let me know your thoughts so far on the program. I am trying to garner some information for you. Yes, so Square 4 is saying how the poor people who don't have any transportation to get from St. John to Park, St. Philip, to part of St. Philip in law school. A law school in St. Philip, law school is Society, Marseille, or close to Marseille Street, St. John, which is very close to St. Philip. Yes, because when you go down Marseille Street, you get a short hill and you go down, then you're close to St. Philip, Three Houses Park, and going up. Like, but there's a critical need. Yes, yes, the old Earth Station, Mr. Angel. I think that is, if I'm right, I think that's Tracy. Tracy. I think Mr. Angel is your name. But yes, the Earth Station. I actually went on a horse ride down with the Earth Station already, and the Earth Station is quite capable of being added back into the national assets of Barbados. I saw the U.S. Army when they had trade wings landing at the Earth Station in St. John and doing the drills in and around the Earth Station. So Queen McQueenis is saying, why you nor me don't know what the Chinese is in our country doing? Well, Queen McQueenis, I have dealt with some Chinese before in Barbados, and I guess on a political level, if you understand how Chinese operate, and the Chinese Communist Party operate, there's a lot of, I don't want to use the word secrecy, but there's a level of tact and diplomacy that the Chinese deploy in terms of engaging countries. There's a lot of non-disclosure agreements that are probably signed, and waivers not to openly criticize or openly talk um, about the levels of investments that the Chinese are doing openly. I don't know what is the reason for it, but um, yeah, I don't know. So, but I would, probably have to ask a question. So let us, yeah, Peter K is saying China is so much more land than Barbados. What is China's objective to be in Barbados? Have some black slaves because we are bigger, stronger, and faster. The Chinese did a test on our Scotland district soil. They have places in their country which is higher than our Scotland, and China has their own land slippage too. Which is true. We really don't know why the Chinese have taken such a deep interest in Barbados, given the fact that they have their own lands and stuff per se. So why? I don't know why. Um, I guess one of the officials could tell us why, but I honestly don't know why. Sean Cool is saying we don't know the conditions of the interest rates of these Chinese loans. Well, the conditions are that you pay back the Chinese on time and in full. And if you default on the loan, Sean Cool, that you sign a waiver to put all national assets up for collateral, meaning that if you don't pay back the Chinese, that the Chinese can take up any of your national assets as collateral. So if you remember, I listened to the former tourism minister, well, the current, I can't remember if she is still now, but I don't even, well, the minister of tourism at the time, Lisa Cummings, and she spoke about the port of Barbados being up for a Chinese loan that was done on the higher of Barbados, and then she was rebuffed by the former tourism minister, Richard City, who came and said that that was a lie, that the port of Barbados was never up for sale in the Chinese deal, that the arrangement was if the government had defaulted on the Chinese loan, then the Chinese would just take the hotel as collateral. But also included in the deal, right? Also included in the deal was that all national assets could be leaned upon as collateral if you don't get back the funding. And all national assets are inclusive of the port. National assets could be considered people too. Okay, but that's another discussion. And the cohort is saying they want putting out the country, all these people coming in here and owning our ancestral. Ain't that they come in and own, is that our leaders are giving it to them, selling it to them for free and pittance. So don't blame the people for coming, blame our leaders. Yeah, so I hope that you are seeing my screen, right? I hope you're seeing my screen, because my screen is showing you, if you look at my page, International Monetary Fund. International Monetary Fund. And it says that the IMF reaches staff level agreement with Barbados for a resilience and sustainability trust program with an accompanying extended fund facility. Right? And this was signed in September 2022. Right? And it says here that Barbados is the first country to reach a staff level agreement to access the IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Trust, which aims to provide affordable long-term financing to help build resilience against climate change. To qualify for the RST, all countries need a concurrent financing or non-financing IMF supported program. Right? That's what it says. Climate change. It also says here, right, that we welcome the staff level agreement reached between the government of Barbados and the IMF team on access to the IMF's new Resilience and Sustainability Trust to build resilience against climate change with affordable long-term financing. Right? It goes on to say here that to maintain and strengthen macroeconomic stability in a more shock-prone environment, enhancing fiscal sustainability, continuing and broadening the implementation of the structural reform agenda, and the combination of the Resilience and Sustainability Trust and the Extended Fund Facility IMF programs aim to strike a balance, enhancing resilience to climate change, while also focusing on Barbados's continued efforts to reduce public debt and facilitate capital expenditure to boost growth. And the agreement is subject to approval by the IMF Executive Board, and the proposed arrangement under the Resilience and Sustainability Fund will provide support to provide financing to support the country's climate change adaptation and mitigation efforts, and support Barbados' ambitious goal of transitioning to a fully renewable energy economy by 2030. Sounds a lot like what I was saying earlier, right? Okay, so the funds, IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Fund, and the proposed broad set of reforms are expected to catalyze financing from the other financial institutions as well as from the private sector. Reforms under the program would include mainstreaming. Reforms under the IMF program would include mainstreaming climate change in the budget, meaning the budget that was pronounced this year, and the enhancement of risk management, including the financial sector, introduction of a green public financial management, including in procurement and adoption of measures that would incentivize the private sector to invest in climate resilient infrastructure and enter renewable energy projects. These measures will be closely coordinated with the World Bank and other international partners, and the executive board consideration of Barbados' request for support can take place once this new instrument has become operational. Right? This is IMF board. It has become operational because Barbados is the first body to sign on to it, right? And it says that, I spoke to Barbados going through all these other issues. We don't want that one. We focus in tonight on climate change. Right? So it says here basically that the IMF toolkit will be helping low income and vulnerable income countries. Right? Vulnerable income countries to address longer term challenges, including those related to climate change and preparedness for climate change and pandemic preparedness. Right? All right. Stop sharing that. I hope you guys just heard what I read to you. I hope you guys just heard what I read to you. Barbados entered into an IMF program specifically to focus on natural disasters and climate change. So you haven't seen anything yet, but just wait for it. Just wait for it. You're going to hear the chief policymakers come to the public and say, oh, we've had $500 million in damage. We need to borrow XYZ amount of money from the World Bank, IMF, to be able to rebuild the country. What's going to happen is that the money will be borrowed, and what's going to happen is that the money will be spent. But what's going to happen is that if they were supposed to build climate change houses, they can build substandard, lower quality houses and do corruption and steal the rest. Just like what they did with the whole project. It happened in Dominica. We had, and I'm going to put it up for you, a Dominica housing project, right? And this Dominica housing project is the same thing as the project in Barbados. Corruption, corruption, corruption. Money spent for houses, can't find the houses, or substandard housing. Becoming a chronic problem through the Caribbean. So my fear here, right? My fear here is that in the midst of natural disasters and you need to rebuild houses that governments do become corrupt and siphon off money. The same way that governments take aid. How many countries across the world? How many let's look at Haiti. How many GoFundMe's, how many donate to Haiti funds have been there throughout the whole world? Every country in the world must be there to donate to Haiti fund. But look at the condition of Haiti. Look at the condition of Haiti. Haiti look like it has been receiving aid and donations to you. No. Right. So what I'm saying is we need to be careful because figures can be artificially increased to reflect that of the level of loan they want to borrow. So we need to be on watch and on guard that Caribbean governments, and I'm saying Barbados Caribbean governments, do not take advantage of the Caribbean people in seeking to go and borrow money in the name of climate change and disaster management and disaster resilience, knowing full well that they intend to siphon off the money and not use it to really and truly rebuild the country. Right? So my thing here is the resources have to be provided, yes. Do we need safeguards against corruption? Yes. Do we need adequate accounting of the money? Yes. Can we trust the parliaments of the Caribbean to do it? No. And why I say no is because let's look at COVID spending in Barbados. Part of the Public Financial Management Bill required the government of Barbados to put all publicly registered contracts, meaning that the contract that whoever got for building the accident and emergency, the contract that whoever got for repairing the Parsons Point Hospital, the contract that you got for repairing the St. Joseph Hospital and the Hillcrest Medical Center, the contract that whoever got for bringing in the job, the contract whoever got for supplying masks and other COVID related infrastructure, any contract over $1 million was supposed to be kept at Kaipo. That any Barbadian could have gone into Kaipo and asked to see a public register of all COVID related expenses. This was since 2019, 2020. And I went to Kaipo and up to today the public register contracts for COVID related expenses are still not at Kaipo. So does not if the government does not want to keep itself accountable, that even in the midst of the worst pandemic in the world, that there could be corrupt, and that one of the businessmen that they were dealing with, he got into a scam, and that is the only way we found out that the government was trying to siphon the people of Barbados' money off and overpaying for jobs. Overpaying for jobs. So let's let us, we can go on the corruption whole day. But I try to show you my screen here. On my screen, They blame carbon, but if humans breathe out carbon dioxide, I man, I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to get too technical with the carbon and non-carbon and this carbon and uh-uh. But there's some trouble here with this thing, man. Oh Lord. Right. Hurricane Rita is saying pandemic. Governments were aware of the pandemic since 2016. So, in your opinion, are governments aware of hurricanes as well? Right. Because our Prime Minister has been speaking about hurricane, climate change, impacts of flooding, been preaching it, preaching it, preaching it. Right. So if you ask me that question, if you make that step, Hurricane Rita, I could then make this you see that statement I just made, I can make that as well. Right. So we don't necessarily want to evoke those type of emotions though. But the point here is that accountability. We need to ensure that governments, Caribbean governments, not just focusing on Barbados because this is a Caribbean thing. Right? I saw at least 4 or 5 prime ministers of the region at cricket at Kensington Oval. So if we can come together for cricket, West Indies cricket, we can definitely come together to the level of CARICOM and policy. And the same way we try to integrate Caribbean single market and economy, we try to work with LIAC. If there's one institution that should be fully functional, regardless of which political administration is in power throughout the Caribbean, it should be a fully functional disaster management plan for all Caribbean countries. All. That if we don't have the resources as a country, Barbados could provide it. If we don't have the resources as a country, as a CARICOM country, Jamaica could afford it. We can pool together to ensure that the people of the Caribbean are safe. Right? So just some theories and thoughts to think about there. Let me just say this. During COVID, when human beings were not allowed on the street, you just saw the earth returning to its natural habitat. Birds were chirping, the monkeys were there, life was happy again. So I think that it's not necessarily that the earth has a problem. I think that the things that human beings are doing to the earth is where the challenge comes from. Good. So here you have it. Here is a Dominica housing recovery project. And this project spoke to rebuilding houses and improving the application of resilient building practices. This was after the hurricane in Dominica, right? So you see that the government of Dominica benefited from a project, or this specific project. So it says for more information, visit here. So we're visiting here. Sean Cool is saying CO2 in the air is very small. to be a threat to can any basic chemistry and biology but plants consume. Really king. Yeah. Marshall belts, that's important. We definitely need drainage because as far as I know, the government of Barbados built a road at Port House in St. John without drainage. And whenever the rain falls, as opposed to the water going down the drain, the water actually washes into people's gallery and destroy people's livelihoods. So you need drainage. The city of Bridgetown needs proper drainage. The city of Bridgetown floods by even a little blink of the eye water. And so Barbados is in need, or definite need, of resilient infrastructure. Some persons may appreciate the name climate change, some may not, some may see it as a hoax, some may not. Okay, I have up on my screen, it should be coming up now. Um, right. I have the information here on the Dominica housing project, but I just want to read it because, you know, internet. So it says here the housing recovery project of Dominica and the development objectives of the housing recovery project for Dominica are to contribute both to the recovery of housing for households affected by Hurricane Maria and to improve the application of resilient building practices in the housing sector. The project comprises three components. The first component, support for housing recovery systems and capacity building, aims to set up systems to manage, expedite, and monitor the program. And two, it will build a sustainable framework for development planning in the housing sector. It's to support for the reconstruction of houses, aims to provide subsidies in the form of small grants for owner-driven reconstruction or replacement of houses that were classified as destroyed by the hurricane, and two subcomponents with support for reconstruction of houses, design and supervision of house reconstruction, project management and coordination, and aims to finance the establishment and operations in the Ministry of Housing and Water Resource Management of Dominica, which is definitely falling right in line with the same thing in Barbados. Um, they give some other classifications here on what housing is and what they intend to do. Right? So my thing here to you, right, is that don't just think that it's just Barbados and not other countries around the Caribbean. I keep harping on this thing. What is the original response? What is the original response? Right? Creed. Right. I have it here now. It's called Creed. Right? A project called Creed in Dominica. A housing project called Creed in Dominica. And it says here that the government of Dominica has a project called Climate Resilience Executing Agency of Dominica, Climate Resilience Executing Agency of Dominica. And the former CEO of that project has since resigned, and he then came to Barbados to become the CEO of the whole project. And it said that this climate creed, it has stretched across many agencies as well, housing, water resources, and helping to enact Dominica's Climate and Resilience and Recovery Program. And it unveiled that Dominica has a national resilience development strategy. So Dominica has a climate resilience strategy. And one of the commenters, a social media commenter, these are his words, and I quote: climate resilience became a phrase used by the Dominica Labour Party to fool the local population and get free money from donors. Right after Maria, I stated here that it will go nowhere because Dominica is a failed state with greedy people posing as ministers and ambassadors. The truth has finally been revealed. Only blind supporters will believe that these people, because they don't know any better and they're greedy onlookers, will stay quiet just because. And that is an interesting observation from just a commenter on the creed, Dominica's climate resilience plan. Right? And it also has something called urban renewal when the government of Dominica was rebuilding houses for after Hurricane Maria. Right? I should also note that the chairman of CREED was the Prime Minister of Dominica himself, Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt, who's also Minister of Finance. Right? And those people in Dominica were also complaining about a lack of preparedness to handle at the time Hurricane Maria. Right? And the people were very critical of Mrs. Skerritt's handling of Hurricane Maria. Right? So transparency and accountability were always a thing. So even the people in Dominica have the same issues as us on alternate views. A transparency and accountability. Who's to say who's to say how the money was spent? Can we have accountability? Yes, the country has been ravished, but is the money getting to the people that it is supposed to get to? So, alternate viewers, we're up at 9:30. So I'm going to read this last thing from Creed on Dominica and speak to Dominica's ah hey. So they gave us about 5 or 6 plans. A national resilience development strategy, a transformation of Dominica's agriculture sector, and raising resilience in ambition. And then Dominica has a climate resilience and recovery plan 2020 to 2030. Right? Climate resilience. So you see throughout the Caribbean, all of the Caribbean leaders are pushing the ideology of climate change, climate resilience, and they are borrowing substantial millions. They are signing IMF programs They're entering into deals with the IDB, the IMF, the IADB, all in the name of climate resilience. Before, when persons like Dr. Dennis Lowe and the former Prime Minister Fernando Stewart and the former Prime Minister Sir Lloyd Sandiford at the time, when they were speaking about climate change, there was not this money concept attached to it. There was not the ideology of borrowing to help fight the climate crisis. But now it has evolved in a way that the Prime Minister of Barbados, the head of the IMF are joining up together and pushing what they call the Bridgestone Initiative. And I spoke to what that was earlier, asking the larger countries with the large foreign reserves to put aside a portion of your foreign reserves into a fund to allow countries like Barbados, who don't have the fiscal space or otherwise to, and that where they can't get access to international credit markets. And they explained Barbados was banned from international credit markets because of this administration's decision to default on the debt. That's the sole reason why we were banned. So the action we took got us banned, and now we have to resort to begging and working hand in hand with the IMF to get other countries to lend us money under the Bridgestone Initiative to help build up climate change and climate resilience and to build climate infrastructure into Barbados. Remember, they had roofs to reefs, and we had the Hope Project, homeowners providing energy where solar panels would have been going on every roof. The Hope Project, just like the Creed Project in Dominica, turned out to be bust, where corruption was rife on the Hope Project. Like, $60 million was taken from the Housing Credit Fund in Barbados to build these climate resilient houses. But again, money spent, no houses to show. Creed in Dominica, the same exact thing. So, St. Vincent, impacted by Barrow. Jamaica, impacted by Barrow. St. Lucia, impacted by Barrow. Will we see the same type of policy behaviors in these countries that we saw in Barbados, Dominica? But I think that we've come to the end of our program. So we are now at 9:36. But let me take some comments from you before we wrap up. But I've come to the end of my segment though. So let me just do some acknowledging. Let us say good night to the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute. We have a special conference coming up in August, and the special conference will be held in Dublin, Ireland. So therefore, we look forward to you viewing the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute's special conference. Let me say good night to our loyal supporters on the live, Tracy, Mr. Angel, and all of the residents of St. John, all of the residents in the city of Bridgestone, all of the residents in St. George, St. Philip, St. Lucy. Sorry about that, Mystic Angel. But good night to my people all across the region, Dominica, St. Vincent, Grenada, Antigua, Jamaica, Guyana, St. Lucia. My best wishes to the people in Carriacou, I hope that your rebuilding journey is smooth and that the government would find the resources to rebuild Grenada. I hope that the government of Barbados takes the opposition leader of Barbados' consideration on and to compensate the fishermen in this country who's lost their entire livelihoods. Don't take advantage of the fishermen. Help them. I would hope that we could find the resources to build the climate infrastructure around Barbados to protect us from further hurricanes and hurricane damage, to stop the seas from bursting its border, to come inland. Help us to devise systems. Help us to have the vision of, as opposed to giving us reclaimed sewage water to drink, have the vision, Barbados, in doing rainwater catchments. If we know that the hurricane season is 6 months a year, let us capture that water and store for the other 6 months, as opposed to, I mean, it may not be enough, but it's certainly better than drinking reused water that is coming out of people's toilets. Right? So we pray that governments will have the vision. We pray that the resources that are being collected on behalf of those impacted by the hurricanes, that they get those resources and that the people can build back better and to protect the countries from the impacts of future disasters, because these hurricanes are something that will not go away. There's nothing we can do about hurricanes but to try to minimize the impact that they will have when they come, and we do know that they come, we do know when they come. And I'm urging you to all follow the bulletins and to prepare and do not take these weather systems for granted. We had deaths throughout the Caribbean. Luckily, we did not have any deaths in Barbados, so we give thanks to the Father for that. And we pray for further protection of our brothers and sisters through the Caribbean. And we pray for the safety of those in America and Mexico, where Beryl is on its way in there. So I hope that you got a thorough understanding tonight. I see Nigel Franklin is in from the US, so welcome, Nigel. Thank you for tuning in. I didn't see Sir Alfred Benjamin tonight. I didn't see Tyrone Nurse and the usual Patreon supporters that will log in. But still, good night to you. Good night to Marcia Weeks and Dave Weeks and the entire Marcia Weeks cast, Caswell Franklin. I want to remind you guys that we are having a picnic at Bath Beach in St. John on Sunday between 12 to 6 p.m. Let's not forget to show your support to the Marcia Weeks Stressless Picnic. We'll be there, food, drink, having a good time at Bath Beach in St. John. Bath Beach is a good beach besides the seaweed, you know, the invasion of the seaweed. But Bath has always been an excellent picnicking spot, and the Marcia Weeks program is headed to Bath on Sunday. So, you know, if you can't go, tell a friend, and let me see you there on Sunday. So, tune in tomorrow as well, 7 p.m. on Marcia Weeks program, and tune in again next week on Alternate Views. I hope to see you next week. So thank you guys very much. Square 4, loyal supporter, thank you very much for coming in. All, thank you very much for the great compliment. I appreciate that. That's what we're all about at Alternate Views. Square 4 again, thank you. Gail Biz, thanks for tuning in for the entire night. I know you say to me sometimes you're busy, but I appreciate the love, and I thank you very much for tuning in. So shout outs to you and to Keith, Hurricane Rater. I appreciate you as always. Peter King is saying Asians will meet in the streets like Gen Zs, chaos Gen Zs. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Square 4 is saying that Dominica holds a man resigned in charge of building houses and came in Barbados and get a job in charge of Hope Housing Projects in St. John. Wonder how many houses at Hope belong to the St. John people? Zero. None. Marietta Ford is saying pushing this climate resilience is a scam, especially in the Caribbean. Well, majority of our governments are on to the climate resilience agenda, borrowing millions and billions in the name of climate change to improve climate infrastructure around the island. So we have to see if the government of Barbados will borrow additional funding and loans under the IMF Resilience and Sustainability Trust from the Chinese, from the Japanese. If they're going to increase taxes, we have to see what will be the response of the government. And as I started, your question, alternate viewers, I see 163 of you still on here. Your question is to ask the government, and you can send this note to your friends who work in the media to ask the government this as well. Is the government of Barbados seeking to default or defer debt payments for 2 years and acting the natural disaster clause that is in our debt instruments, that we can then defer the payments for 2 years and then the payment will be added on after the 2 years in either in principal or increased payment? Ask the government that question. Do not let them get away from it. Be cautious also about the amount of loans that will be borrowed in the name of climate change and also in the name of rebuilding the country's climate infrastructure. Pay attention to Resilience and Sustainability Trust. 2 or 3 days before the hurricane, Barbados got an additional IMF drawdown under the same resilience fund. So it's like the government kind of knew this hurricane was coming and they went and borrowed $100 million from the IMF, and the drawdown came just in the nick of time before the hurricane hit. So the government has money. The government has an IMF drawdown on the books, and they got it just before the hurricane. So any more loans from here on out, the government needs to justify it to Barbadians why they are going to go and borrow additional monies if they just got the last IMF drawdown 2 or 3 or 4 days before the hurricane hit. That is the end of Alternate Views, people. Kimar Stewart, your host. Thank you very much. Gabez asks if I'm still getting a bus. Yes, Gabez, I'm still getting the bus from Bridgetown. It'll be leaving Independence Square for around 11:30. So if you need transportation, the bus will be leaving Independence Square to head to the beach, Bath Beach, on Sunday in St. John. You know, St. John is our favorite parish. So let everybody in St. John know we'll be there on Sunday. And thank you guys again very much, Alternate Views. We will see you guys next week. We will see you guys next week. So thank you very much. Don't forget to like and share the program. Just give me a good word if you enjoy the show. Give me a good word if you enjoy the show. Give me a good word if you enjoy the show. I love the encouragement and I appreciate it. So, leave me a good comment, a thumbs up, whatever you want to leave for me, just to keep me going. I do this for you, the people, Barbadians. We have an international audience, so just can't say Barbadians, but my global audience, my tribe, my family. Alternate Views, Kimar Stewart speaking, signing out. We will see you next week, Thursday. So, goodbye, my people.